It started with a lie so small I almost missed it. "Lisa and I are going out for dinner," she said, slipping on her coat without looking at me. It was a Friday night, and I was already half distracted, scrolling through my phone on the couch. "Cool," I muttered. "Tell her I said hi." "Sure," she said, and then she was gone. And that should have been the end of it. Another regular night, another regular outing. Except an hour later, Lisa sent me a meme. I replied with a casual, "How's dinner with my wife?" thinking nothing of it. Lisa's response? "Dinner? What are you talking about?" For a second, I just stared at my screen, my heartbeat a dull thud in my ears. Maybe Lisa had forgotten. Maybe she was just messing with me. I typed back, "Aren't you with her? She said you guys were going out." 3 dots appeared. Then they disappeared. Then nothing. My stomach twisted. Lisa was a talker. The fact that she wasn't immediately spamming me with an explanation meant only one thing. She didn't know what to say. I put my phone down slowly. She lied. And not a white lie, not an "I was embarrassed to tell you I went to Taco Bell instead of a fancy restaurant" kind of lie. This was deliberate, calculated. I didn't text Lisa again. I didn't call my wife. I didn't move. I just sat there, letting the weight of it settle over me. And then, after a long moment, I grabbed my keys. If she wasn't with Lisa, then where the hell was she? I drove without a plan, without a destination. I just let instinct guide me, and instinct took me straight to the downtown district where the nice restaurants were, where people who had something to hide thought they could blend in. And that's where I found her, sitting at a dimly lit table near the back of a trendy restaurant, laughing at something a man across from her had said. She had that look on her face, that look she used to give me when we first started dating. Playful. Interested. The guy was leaning in too close. Smirking. Like he knew he had her. Like he'd had her before. And suddenly, I didn't need Lisa to confirm anything. I knew. I didn't storm in. I didn't cause a scene. I wasn't about to let emotions rob me of what I really wanted: revenge. So instead, I took out my phone. I recorded a short video. Just enough to capture the way she was touching his wrist lightly when she laughed. The way he was looking at her like he had already won. Then I walked away. She thought she was bold enough to cheat on me in public? She had no idea what was coming. I didn't go home right away. I needed time to think. Time to let the cold, ugly truth sink in without letting the rage take over. I parked a few blocks away, staring blankly at my hands on the steering wheel. My heart was still hammering from what I had just seen. My wife, glowing under the dim restaurant lights, tilting her head toward another man like he was the most interesting person in the world. I played the video again. Her smile, his smirk, the way she traced a slow circle on the table with her fingertip as he spoke, like she was teasing him without words. I clenched my jaw, exhaling sharply. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This wasn't an innocent dinner between colleagues. It was intimate. It was the beginning of something, or maybe it had been going on for longer than I realized. I should have felt devastated, broken, but all I felt was cold calculation creeping into my veins. I wasn't going to confront her. Not yet. No, I was going to make her squirm. Step 1. Play dumb. By the time I got home, she was already there. Her shoes were neatly placed by the door, her coat hanging up as if nothing had happened. When I stepped inside, she was on the couch, scrolling through her phone like it was just another normal night. I stood there for a moment, just watching her. She looked up and smiled. "Hey, babe, babe," the same word she probably called him before she left the restaurant. "Hey," I said, forcing my voice to stay casual. "How was dinner?" She stretched like a cat, letting out a small sigh. "Oh, same old, same old." Lisa was ranting about her job. "We had sushi. Nothing special." Liar. I sat down beside her, pretending to focus on the TV. "You should have brought me back something," I joked. She nudged me playfully. "You always say you don't like sushi. I'd eat it if you brought it." She giggled. "Next time, then. Next time." The way she said it so effortlessly, like she had already planned another night. Another lie. I could have confronted her right then. I could have pulled out my phone, shown her the video, and watched her stumble over her excuses. But that would have been too easy, too quick. I wanted her to feel it. So instead, I leaned back, wrapped my arm around her like nothing was wrong, and pressed a soft kiss to the top of her head. She hummed in contentment, snuggling closer. It was disgusting, but I smiled, because she had no idea I was already 5 steps ahead of her. And this was only the beginning. The next morning, I woke up to the smell of coffee. She was in the kitchen, humming softly as she poured herself a cup, dressed in one of my old t-shirts, looking every bit like a devoted wife who had nothing to hide. If I hadn't seen it with my own eyes, I might have believed the act. But now, every little detail felt like a performance. The way she smiled when she handed me my coffee. The way she leaned against the counter, stretching like she didn't have a care in the world. "Got any plans today?" she asked casually. I took a sip of my coffee. "Not much. Just some errands." She nodded. "I might go shopping with Lisa later." Another lie. I kept my expression neutral. "Sounds fun. Tell her I said hi." "Of course," she said, smiling sweetly. I wanted to laugh. I finished my coffee and kissed her cheek before heading out. She thought she was getting away with it. She thought I was just another clueless husband. But while she was busy lying to my face, I was setting the trap. Step 2. Watch her squirm. I spent the day preparing. First, I sent Lisa a text. "Hey, just checking, are you actually going shopping with my wife today?" Her response came within minutes. "No?" She didn't mention anything to me. Perfect. Next, I needed to confirm where she was actually going. I wasn't about to follow her like some pathetic, heartbroken husband. No, I wanted her to slip up on her own. So I made a call. "Hey man," I said, keeping my tone casual. "Got any dinner plans?" My friend Mark hesitated. "Not really." "Why?" "Meet me downtown in 2 hours. We're something nice. I've got a bet to win." Mark was confused, but he agreed. He owed me a few favors, and I needed someone to back me up for what I was about to do. Step 3. Catch her in the act. Again, a few hours later, Mark and I were sitting at a sleek bar across from a high-end steakhouse. From here, I had the perfect view of the entrance. And sure enough, right on time, there she was. She stepped out of a sleek black car, wearing a dress I hadn't seen before, hair styled perfectly, looking effortlessly stunning, like she was trying to impress someone. And then he stepped out after her. The same guy from the restaurant. I felt Mark shift beside me. "Dude," he muttered. "Is that?" "Yup," I said coldly. She didn't see us. She was too busy laughing at something the guy said, her hand resting lightly on his arm as they walked inside. I exhaled slowly, forcing down the surge of anger clawing up my throat. I already had my proof. Now it was time for the fun part. "Mark," I said, standing up, "follow my lead." And with that, I walked into the restaurant after them. Ready to make my move, I stepped into the restaurant, the low hum of conversation and the clinking of silverware filling the air. The lighting was warm, intimate, the kind of place designed for whispered secrets and stolen glances. Fitting. Mark followed a few steps behind me, watching as I scanned the room. I spotted them near the back, seated at a cozy little corner table, deep in conversation. My wife was leaning in slightly, her eyes locked on his, her fingers absently playing with the stem of her wine glass. She looked comfortable, like this wasn't the first time. I clenched my jaw, then forced myself to relax. No anger. Not yet. This needed to play out exactly right. Mark leaned in. "So what's the plan? Are we throwing drinks? Making a scene?" I shook my head. "No. I want her to feel it first." I turned away from their table and signaled for the hostess. "Table for 2, I said smoothly, keeping my voice low. "Somewhere with a good view." The hostess smiled politely and led us across the restaurant, to a table just a few feet away from theirs. Perfect. I sat down, making sure my chair was angled just right. From here, I had the perfect sight line to my wife and her date. She hadn't noticed me yet, too wrapped up in her little fantasy. Mark's eyes flicked to them, then back to me. "You sure about this?" I smirked. "Oh, I'm sure." Then, I pulled out my phone and snapped a single picture. A clean shot. Her smiling. Him leaning in. Their glasses raised in a silent toast. She thought she was winning. She thought she was untouchable. She had no idea she was already drowning. Step 4. The drop of poison. I sent the photo to Lisa with a simple message. "Thought you might find this interesting." Then I put my phone down and waited. It didn't take long. A minute later, my wife's phone, sitting beside her plate, buzzed. She barely glanced at it at first. But then, as the screen lit up with a second notification, something changed. Her smile faltered. Her fingers tensed around her wine glass. She picked up the phone, brows furrowing as she read the message. I knew exactly what Lisa had said. She was smart. She wouldn't play dumb. She'd get straight to the point. Who the hell is that guy? I watched as my wife's throat bobbed, her fingers tightening around her phone. She took a deep breath, forcing a casual expression as she typed something back quickly. Then, just as she set her phone down, she finally looked up, and her eyes locked onto mine. For the first time that night, her face went completely still. Her lips parted slightly. Shock. Fear. Panic. I smiled. Raised my glass. Her date, completely oblivious, chuckled at something and reached for his steak knife. But she wasn't listening anymore. She was staring at me like she had just seen a ghost. I could feel her brain scrambling for an explanation, trying to come up with a reason, any reason, why her husband was sitting just a few feet away watching her cheat in real time. But I didn't give her the chance. Instead, I pulled out my phone again and typed another message. This time, I sent it directly to her. "Enjoying dinner, sweetheart?" Her phone buzzed again. She flinched like it had burned her. Then slowly she reached for it. She read the message. Her hands shook slightly as she set the phone back down. She licked her lips, glancing quickly at her date, then back at me. I just smiled. She had no idea what to do, and I loved it. This was only the beginning. Her fingers hovered over the phone like she was debating whether to pick it up again. But she didn't. She just sat there, her face frozen in a mask of forced composure, while the reality of the situation crashed down around her. She had been caught. Not in some distant, hypothetical way where she could spin a story and buy herself time. No, she had been caught red-handed in the middle of her little secret world, and there was no escape. I could see it, the way her mind was racing, trying to calculate her next move. But there were no moves left. Her date, still blissfully unaware, continued talking, cutting into his steak like nothing had changed. But my wife, oh, she was spiraling. Her fingers clenched on the edge of the table, her posture too stiff, her breath coming a little too fast. I raised my glass again, taking a slow sip, letting the moment stretch out unbearably long. She finally looked away, inhaled sharply, and then, like a true actress, plastered on a smile and turned back to her date. I almost laughed. Of course she was going to try and pretend nothing was wrong. She was bold, after all. A liar through and through. She wasn't about to crumble in front of him. Not yet. But I wasn't done with her. Not even close. Step 5. Push her over the edge. I leaned over to Mark. "Watch this," I murmured. Then, without breaking eye contact with her, I pulled out my phone and typed a message. You should introduce me to your friend. He seems nice." I hit send. She barely had time to take a breath before her phone vibrated again. I saw the muscles in her jaw tighten as she reached for it, her fingers moving stiffly. She read the message, and that was when she snapped. Her eyes shot up, meeting mine with a look that was all fire and fury. Gone was the guilt, the panic. In its place, pure, unfiltered rage. I smirked. Oh, now she was angry? That's cute. She shoved her phone down onto the table so forcefully that her date finally noticed. "You okay?" he asked, frowning. She forced another tight smile. "Yeah, just work stuff. Lies, lies, and more lies." I could see her struggling, desperately trying to figure out how to get out of this situation without making a scene. But there was no escape. So I made the decision for her. I stood up. Mark tensed beside me. Dude, I ignored him. With slow, deliberate steps, I walked across the restaurant, weaving between tables, my footsteps unhurried, confident. I wasn't storming in like some betrayed husband looking for a fight. No, I was calm, in control. And that's what scared her the most. She stiffened as I approached, her entire body going rigid. Her date looked up, confused, blinking between us. "Hey," I said smoothly, stopping at their table. "Mind if I join?" Her date frowned, clearly clueless. Sorry, do we know you?" My wife's hands curled into fists. I turned to her, smiling. "Honey, aren't you going to introduce us?" Her mouth opened, but no words came out. Her date stared at me, then at her. His brow furrowed. "Wait, honey?" And there it was. The moment of impact. The second everything shattered. He pulled his arm away from the table slightly, like he had just touched something disgusting. "Wait, what the hell is going on?" I gave him a sympathetic look. "Oh, you didn't know?" I sighed. "Yeah, see, this woman you're having dinner with? She's actually my wife." Dead silence. Then, in the middle of the crowded restaurant, he laughed. A sharp, amused chuckle like he couldn't believe what he had just heard. He leaned back in his chair, looking at her like she was the punchline to a joke. "You're married?" My wife looked like she wanted to crawl under the table and die. I crossed my arms, watching her squirm. "So?" I prompted. "Are you going to explain, or should I?" Her head snapped toward me, her teeth clenched. "Can we not do this here?" She hissed under her breath. I raised an eyebrow. "Oh, now you don't want an audience? You had no problem putting on a show when you were giggling over wine with him." Her date let out a low whistle, shaking his head. "Wow, that's insane." He pushed his chair back, grabbing his jacket. "I don't do married women. That's messy as hell. I'm out." He stood up, barely sparing her another glance before walking away. My wife was breathing hard, her face bright red with humiliation. Her hands trembled on the table, her entire body rigid with barely contained fury. I tilted my head. "Looks like your date didn't want to stick around." She shot up from her chair so fast it nearly toppled over. "You," she seethed, pointing a shaking finger at me. "You set me up." I laughed. "Oh, I set you up?" I gestured around. "No, sweetheart, you did this all on your own." Her nostrils flared. "You followed me." "Didn't have to," I said easily. "You're a terrible liar." She opened her mouth to scream something. Probably some excuse, some twisted attempt to make me the villain. But then she seemed to realize where we were. People were staring. Whispers were already spreading. And for a woman who thrived on appearances, that was worse than anything I could have said. She swallowed hard, her jaw tight. Then, without another word, she spun around and stormed out of the restaurant. I watched her go, savoring every second. Then, with a satisfied smirk, I walked back to my table, sat down, and picked up my drink. Mark just stared at me wide-eyed. Holy SHT star. I clinked my glass against his. "And that, my friend, is what you call a checkmate." But the game wasn't over yet. Not even close. I let her storm out. I let her sit in that boiling anger, drowning in her own humiliation. I wanted her to walk out of that restaurant knowing, with every fiber of her being, that I was in control now. And I wasn't done. Mark was still staring at me like I had just pulled off a heist. "Dude," he muttered, shaking his head. "That was brutal." I smirked, swirling the ice in my glass. "Oh, it's just getting started." Because here was the thing, she thought the worst part of this was me catching her. She thought the damage had already been done. But no. The real damage came after. I pulled out my phone and typed a quick message. "Me, see you at home, sweetheart." And then I waited. Step 6, let the monster out. I took my time finishing my drink, letting her sit in her own panic. I could imagine it already, the way she was probably pacing at home, yanking her hair, thinking of all the ways she could spin this. Because of course she was going to try and spin it. That was what liars did. When I finally walked through the front door, she was already there, standing in the middle of the living room, arms crossed, eyes burning with fury. She had changed out of the dress, now in an old sweatshirt, like she thought dressing down would make her look innocent. I shut the door behind me. She didn't waste a second. "You humiliated me," she hissed. I let out a slow, amused breath. "Oh, you? You're the victim now?" She took a step forward, fists clenched. "Yes. You had no right to do that." I laughed. Actually laughed. "No right? You were out with another man, lying to my face, acting like I was some idiot who wouldn't notice and I had no right. I tilted my head. Tell me, what exactly was I supposed to do? Send you a thank you card? She was shaking now, her entire body vibrating with anger. I told you it wasn't what it looked like. I scoffed. Oh, so we're doing that? I took a step closer, my voice dropping to something darker. I saw you. I recorded you. I have a full-blown video of you giggling at his every word, touching his wrist, looking at him like you used to look at me. My voice sharpened. So go ahead, lie to me again. Her lips parted, her breath uneven. She was scrambling. I could see it, the way her eyes darted, searching for an escape route. But there was none. So, she switched tactics. You were spying on me, she accused, voice venomous. That's disgusting. I laughed again, shaking my head. Spying? Babe, you lied about where you were, told me you were with Lisa, and then paraded around town with your little boyfriend. If I had been some random stranger in that restaurant, I would have thought you were already married to him. Her nostrils flared. We were just talking. I stared at her. Do you actually believe that? Silence. And there it was. The hesitation. The 1 second of delay where her brain tried to decide whether to double down or admit defeat. That second was all I needed. I scoffed, shaking my head. You can't even say it, can you? I exhaled sharply. God, you're pathetic. Her face twisted with fury. Don't talk to me like that. Or what? I challenged, stepping even closer. You'll go on another girl's night? Find another idiot to flirt with? Her eyes flashed. Oh, save it, I cut her off. You chose this. You chose to lie to me, to sneak around. You thought you could keep me on the sidelines while you played your little games. I tilted my head. Tell me, what was the plan? Were you going to sleep with him? Were you going to cry to Lisa about how mean your husband is while you ran around with your little boy toys? She opened her mouth, but I wasn't finished. You were so sure I wouldn't notice, I continued. You thought I was just another clueless husband. You thought you were smarter than me. I leaned in. But you're not. Her hands were shaking now, her breathing fast, her eyes wild with rage. I wanted her to feel it. The same helplessness she had forced onto me. The same humiliation. The same betrayal. And then, just as I expected, she cracked. Fine. She exploded, throwing her hands up. I was bored, okay? Bored. You're always so predictable, so routine, and I wanted something else. I stared at her, my blood running ice cold. She wasn't sorry. She wasn't remorseful. She was blaming me. I let out a slow, deep breath. Wow. She sneered. What? You think you're perfect? You think you've never made mistakes? At least I was trying to have fun. Fun? I repeated, my voice dangerously low. She scoffed. Oh, don't look at me like that. You act like you're the saint, like you've never done anything wrong. But let's be real, you're boring. You do the same things every day, you never surprise me, and you expect me to just sit here and be grateful? I exhaled sharply, shaking my head. So that's what this is. I let out a bitter laugh. You got bored, so you decided to be a lying, cheating piece of garbage. Her jaw clenched. I didn't cheat. I gave her a slow, pitying smile. Oh, sweetheart. I took out my phone, pulling up the video. Let's see what the internet thinks about that. Her face drained of color. You wouldn't I? I scrolled my thumb over the screen, as if preparing to send it. You see, I don't have to yell. I don't have to asterisk hit you where it hurts. Because your own actions? They'll do it for me. Her breathing turned shallow. You can't do that. I raised an eyebrow. Can't I? Should we test that theory? Her entire body was trembling now, her anger morphing into something else. Desperation. I tucked my phone away and smiled. What's wrong? You didn't look this nervous when you were flirting with him. Stop it, she whispered. I leaned in. No. Silence stretched between us, thick and suffocating. Then finally she broke. What do you want? She choked out. I smiled. There it was. Checkmate. And I was just getting started. I stared at her, letting the silence stretch unbearably long. Letting her feel the weight of it. Letting her wither under my gaze. She had spent so much time lying, so much time winning, that the idea of losing had never even crossed her mind. But now she was drowning in it, and I wanted to watch her sink. She swallowed hard, her voice smaller now. What do you want? I tilted my head. What do I want? I repeated, pretending to think. Well, for starters, I want you to admit what you did. Her eyes flashed with something sharp, like she still wanted to fight. I already told you I didn't cheat, I laughed. Actually laughed. You didn't cheat? I pulled out my phone again, waving it slightly. So what is this then? Community outreach? Were you mentoring him? Coaching him through a midlife crisis? I smirked. Because from where I was sitting, it sure looked like you were trying to crawl into his lap. Her nostrils flared. You're being ridiculous. I arched a brow. Ridiculous? You lied to my face. You told me you were going out with Lisa. And instead, you were on a date. It wasn't a date, she hissed. I exhaled sharply, shaking my head. You're really going to die on this hill, huh? She crossed her arms, her nails digging into her skin. We were just talking. I scoffed. Just talking? My voice dropped lower, sharper. Then why did you lie? She opened her mouth, then snapped it shut. Exactly. Because there was no good answer. No excuse that could save her. And now, for the first time, she knew it. I leaned in, my voice slow and deliberate. You didn't lie because you were just talking. You lied because you knew what you were doing was wrong. I tilted my head. Tell me, if I had done the exact same thing, if I had dressed up, taken some woman out, laughed at her jokes the way you laughed at his, would you be this calm? Her jaw clenched. I smirked. That's what I thought. She exhaled sharply, dragging her hands through her hair. She looked exhausted now, like she had just run 10 miles barefoot. But I didn't feel sorry for her. Not even a little. She deserved this. Every single second. Step 7. Let her break herself. She sat down heavily on the couch, pressing the heels of her palms into her eyes. Okay, she muttered, her voice barely above a whisper. Fine. Maybe it looked bad, but I wasn't gonna do anything. She hesitated, and there it was, the unraveling, the last desperate attempt to rewrite reality before it slipped completely through her fingers. I folded my arms, waiting. You just what? She exhaled shakily, then looked up at me, her eyes glassy. I missed feeling wanted. I stared at her. She blinked rapidly, like she was trying to summon tears. You don't look at me like that anymore. You don't act like I'm exciting. Like I'm new. And she swallowed. I just wanted to feel like someone still saw me that way. I let her words hang in the air for a moment. Let her think they had weight. Let her think I was actually processing them. Then I laughed. A low, disbelieving chuckle. She flinched slightly. You missed feeling wanted? I repeated, shaking my head. That's your excuse? I exhaled sharply. God, you really are something else. Her eyes flashed. It's not an excuse, it's how I feel and how I feel. I shot back, cutting her off. Does that matter at all? Or do only your feelings count? She hesitated. I let out a slow, humorless breath. You wanted to feel wanted, so instead of talking to me, instead of doing anything that made sense, you ran off to some guy and let him think he had a chance with you? She swallowed. I wasn't. Oh, you were. I snapped. You wanted him to think it. That's why you smiled like that. That's why you touched his hand. That's why you didn't tell him you were married. Her breath hitched slightly. I took another step closer, my voice deadly quiet now. You wanted to feel wanted? And what about me? Her head snapped up. Asterisk, do you have any idea what it felt like to sit there and watch my wife, bat her eyelashes at some guy like he was the most interesting man in the world? Do you know what it's like to watch the person you love act like you don't exist? My voice sharpened. Because let me tell you, that doesn't feel like being wanted. Her lip trembled slightly. But I wasn't finished. You sit here, crying about how I don't make you feel special anymore, but did it ever cross your mind that maybe I didn't change? That maybe you just got too busy looking over my shoulder, searching for something new? I exhaled sharply. I didn't stop loving you. You stopped appreciating it. Silence. She looked down, blinking rapidly. Her hands were clenched together so tightly that her knuckles had turned white. For the first time tonight, she had nothing to say. Good. I nodded slowly, stepping back. So you asked me what I want? I exhaled sharply. I want you to sit with this. I want you to sit with the fact that you ruined something good for a temporary thrill. I want you to sit with the fact that for the first time in your life, you don't get to be the victim. I grabbed my keys off the counter and turned toward the door. She shot up from the couch. Where are you going? I didn't even look back. Somewhere you can't lie to me. And then I walked out. I didn't stop walking until I was in my car, gripping the steering wheel so tight my fingers ached. The silence inside the vehicle felt deafening after the storm I had just walked out of. My wife, soon-to-be ex-wife, if things went my way, was probably still standing in the living room trying to piece together what had just happened. She expected me to scream, to throw things, to lash out in some dramatic, predictable way. But no, that wasn't what I wanted. I wanted her to feel it. I wanted her to sit in that house, alone, drowning in her own self-inflicted misery. Because that was the difference between me and her. I had never once made her doubt me. She had always known exactly where I stood, exactly how much I loved her. I had given her everything, and she had thrown it away for a moment. A thrill. And now she didn't know where I was. She didn't know what I was thinking. She didn't know if I was coming back. And I loved that. Step 8. Take everything away. I drove aimlessly for a while, letting the city lights blur past me. I wasn't angry anymore. Not in that explosive, immediate way. No, this was something colder, sharper, a calculated anger. Because now I knew exactly what I had to do. She wanted to act like she was single, like she had all these options. Fine. I was about to give her exactly what she wanted. I pulled into a parking lot and grabbed my phone. There was one person who needed to know everything, Lisa. I didn't even have to type anything. I just forwarded her the video. Took less than a minute for her to call me. Are you kidding me? Lisa's voice practically exploded through the speaker. What the hell is this? I smirked. Exactly what it looks like. Oh my God. She exhaled sharply. Okay. I knew she was acting weird. But this is holy sh*t. Does she know you have this? Oh, she knows, I said casually. Lisa was silent for a moment. Then, what do you need? Bingo. Lisa wasn't just her best friend. She was our friend. She had been around since the beginning, had been in our wedding, had seen the real version of me before my wife decided she needed something new. And now Lisa was pissed. She lied to you too, I pointed out. Used your name as an excuse. Didn't even bother warning you first. Lisa made a disgusted noise. That bitch? I chuckled. So, you still planning that girls' trip with her next month? Like hell I am, she snapped. I don't even want to look at her right now. Good. Because I wasn't just trying to expose my wife, I was trying to take everything from her. And that included her social circle. You should probably let the other girls know, I added smoothly. Wouldn't want them getting dragged into her mess too. Oh, don't worry, Lisa growled. I'll make sure everyone knows exactly what kind of person she is. I smiled. Appreciate it. And just like that, my wife's carefully constructed world started to crumble. Step 9. Deliver the final blow. By the time I got back to the house, it was late. The lights were still on. She was waiting for me. Good. I stepped inside, shutting the door behind me. She was sitting on the couch, her leg bouncing anxiously, her face pale. She had changed again, this time into actual pajamas, like she was trying to paint some picture of a sad, remorseful wife waiting for her husband to come home. Pathetic. You left, she said quietly. I arched a brow. You noticed? She swallowed. Where did you go? I smirked. Wouldn't you love to know? She inhaled sharply. Look, I don't want to fight anymore. Can we just talk? Talk? I repeated, amused. Now you want to talk? Her jaw tightened. Yes. I exhaled, then walked forward, sitting down in the armchair across from her. I stretched out, completely relaxed. All right, I said. Let's talk. She hesitated, like she wasn't sure if this was a trap. Then, slowly, she folded her hands in her lap. I know I hurt you, she started. And I know I messed up. But she swallowed. I don't want this to be the end of us. I tilted my head. And why's that? She blinked. Because I love you. I let out a low chuckle. You love me? Yes, she insisted. Funny, I said. Because you sure didn't look like a woman in love when you were all over him. Her lips pressed together. I wasn't all over him, shut up. Her head snapped up. I smiled, slow and cruel. I mean it. Shut up. I've heard enough lies for one lifetime. She exhaled shakily, but she didn't argue. I'll make this simple for you, I said, leaning forward. You are going to lose me. But it won't be quick. It won't be clean. And it definitely won't be painless. Her face went slack. From this moment on, I want you to understand something, I continued, my voice low. You don't matter to me anymore. Your tears? Your guilt? Your sudden realization that you love me? Too late. Her breathing was shaky now, her fingers gripping the couch. But don't worry, I cut in, smirking. I'll make sure everyone else gets to enjoy your mess. Lisa, your family, your friends, they're all going to know exactly what you did. Her lips parted, her expression one of pure horror. I stood up. You wanted excitement, sweetheart? You got it. And with that, I walked away, leaving her sitting in the ruins of everything she had built. Because the game was over. And I had won. She didn't follow me this time. No desperate footsteps behind me. No pleading voice calling my name. No more weak attempts to spin the situation in her favor. Because she knew. She had finally realized that there was nothing left to salvage. And that was exactly what I wanted. I walked upstairs into what used to be her bedroom and shut the door behind me. It felt different now. Like a place I was simply passing through rather than one I belonged in. She had poisoned it. She had poisoned everything. I sat on the edge of the bed, exhaling slowly. The adrenaline was wearing off, leaving something heavier in its place. Not sadness. Not regret. Just finality. This marriage was dead. And all that was left was to burn the remains. Step 9. Take back everything I didn't sleep. I spent the next few hours going through the house, making quiet, deliberate choices. The framed wedding photos? Gone. The little love notes we used to leave for each other? Trashed. Anything that had once made this house feel like ours was now meaningless. I wasn't packing up my life. I was clearing out the debris. I took my time, moving through each room like a ghost. She was still downstairs, probably curled up on the couch, too afraid to come up and face me again. Good. I wanted her to sit there, surrounded by the wreckage of her own making. By the time the sun started creeping through the windows, I had gathered everything I needed. A suitcase of clothes. My laptop. My essentials. That was it. Everything else? She could keep it. Let her rot in this place, drowning in the memories of what she destroyed. When I finally came downstairs, she was still in the same spot. She looked like she hadn't slept either. Her eyes were red. Her hair was a mess. For a brief second, she looked like a stranger. I had spent years thinking I knew her, thinking she was mine. But the truth was, she had been gone for a long time. And now I was leaving too. She lifted her head slightly, her voice hoarse. Where are you going? I didn't stop walking. Away from you. She swallowed. For how long? I laughed under my breath. Forever. Her breath hitched, but I didn't slow down. I reached the front door, suitcase in hand, and finally turned back to look at her. You did this, I said simply. Don't forget that. And then, I walked out, stepping into the morning air as the weight of this marriage finally slid off my shoulders. Step 10. Watch her crumble. I drove away without looking back. But I wasn't done. Oh no. I had one final move left. I parked a few blocks away, pulled out my phone, and sent a message. Not to her. To her parents. Hey, just thought you should know your daughter has been lying to everyone. I'll let her explain. Then I forwarded them the video. Next, I sent it to a few more people, mutual friends, family members, anyone who had ever looked at us and thought we were the perfect couple. By the time I was done, my phone was already blowing up. Lisa, what the actual hell? Everyone's freaking out. Her brother, dude. I had no idea. I'm so sorry. One of her coworkers, wow. Just, wow. She's been playing all of us. And then, finally, a message from her. My wife, are you serious? What the hell is wrong with you? I smiled. Checkmate.my phone kept vibrating with incoming messages, but I didn't rush to open them. I just sat there in my car, watching the sunrise, feeling something I hadn't felt in a long, long time. Relief. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like I was carrying the weight of our marriage on my back. I didn't feel trapped in the endless cycle of trying to be enough for someone who was always looking for something more. I was free. And she? She was about to experience exactly what it felt like to be left behind. Step 10. Leave nothing behind. By the time I finally checked my phone, my wife had sent 6 more texts. Her anger had gone through all the expected stages. Rage. You're a psycho. You had no right to do that. Denial. You're making this into something it's not. I told you. Nothing happened. Deflection. You've never been perfect, either. Maybe if you had actually paid attention to me, I wouldn't have needed to go out that night. Desperation. Please, let's just talk. We can fix this. Guilt tripping. You're ruining my life. Do you even care what this is doing to me? Begging. I'll do anything. Just please talk to me. I didn't answer. She had spent so much time believing she had control over me. So much time thinking she could manipulate me with her words. But her words meant nothing now. Instead, I sent one final text. Me. You wanted attention? Well, now you have it. Then I blocked her. The aftermath. Over the next few days, I watched from a distance as her world fell apart. Her parents called her furious. Her mother, who had always adored me, didn't even try to defend her. Her father, an old-school, no-nonsense kind of man, was even worse. Lisa cut her off completely. Our mutual friends? Gone. She had spent so much time building an image of herself as the perfect wife, the perfect woman, someone who deserved admiration. But now everyone saw her for what she really was. A liar. A cheat. A fraud. And me? I moved on. I got my own place. I started focusing on myself for the first time in years. And slowly, I started remembering what it felt like to be happy. To wake up without wondering if my wife was lying to me. To go to sleep without feeling like I wasn't enough. To just live. One night, weeks later, I got a call from an unknown number. I answered out of curiosity. Silence on the other end. Then, a shaky breath. I miss you, she whispered. I closed my eyes for a moment, letting the weight of it sink in. She had finally realized it. She had finally realized what she had lost. I took a deep breath. Then, in the calmest voice I'd ever used, I said, I don't miss you. And I hung up. I never heard from her again. Because this time I was the one who walked away. And I never looked back.